Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
All over the place. Hi, I'm Patricia Donnellan, and I'm a Microsoft employee who really cares about the giving campaign. This is my absolute favorite time of the year, the month where we get to relax our policies and have our favorite nonprofits come on board and drive the awareness across our campaign. For those of you that are new to Microsoft or need a gentle reminder, we have some changes to the policy I want to highlight for you. This year, they've announced that one, there's no minimum for matching. That means hours and monetary matching. So previously, you had to donate at least 4 hours of your time at a nonprofit in a block in order to have that matched. And so now there's no minimum. So you could spend an hour sorting things at the Goodwill, have that matched at $25 per hour, which is amazing. And there's also no minimum. Previously, for overhead costs, we had the minimum donation needed to be $25, and now it's pretty much $1. So if you give $10 to a bake sale, that's going to be matched, and it also is matched with your name. So as we're driving for significant participation this year, NEO participation, those that are new to Microsoft, those new employees also benefit from having $50 sitting out there at the Give site for them. So if they go to Whack Whack Give, they will see at the top, I think it's in red, a banner that has $50. So they can go and choose to spend Microsoft's $50 that they put in their account, find their favorite nonprofit, donate that $50. If they choose to, they can donate another $25. Microsoft matches that $25. So 50, 25, 25, your nonprofit just got $100 for 5 minutes of your time. And that's for any employees. And I believe that it sits out there in the Give tool for 18 months, 2 years or so. Right, so when you're overwhelmed, new to Microsoft, drinking from the fire hose, just put that in your back pocket, and 6 months later, when you're coming up for air, find whatever drives your passion for the community. So today I'm standing before you because our beloved Monica Rosenberg had an urgent issue that took her out of the Seattle area this week. So I'm just standing in for Monica, although she's really the person behind this event today and cares so deeply about the National Parks Conservation Agency. So in a moment, I'm going to hand it over to our two speakers. We have Shannon Brundle, who's been with the National Parks Conservation Association for about 3 years. She's the connective tissue over there. She understands what it means to bring the volunteers together. So if you've got interest in volunteering in this area, I highly recommend reaching out to Shannon, who I'm sure will share her contact information with you shortly. And then we also have one of my good friends, I'm really glad to see here today, Paul Bali, he will be celebrating 1 year with the national parks in December, but he's got 15 years of conservation nonprofit work under his belt. And before that, of course, he was one of us. He was a Microsoftie for about 10 years. So we're excited to have these two here today to talk about the national parks conservation. For those of you in the room, I have a couple questions for you. If you can answer them, I've got some really great swag I'm going to throw at you. And I've got a good right hook. And for anyone who's just joining in the room, there's pizza, great pagliacci in the back. Feel free to help yourself. Raise your hand or nod if you know the employee matching limit. So that would be what you donate in merchandise that's matched from the Microsoft Store. So either merchandise or time at $25 an hour or cash donations. What's the maximum matching from Microsoft per year? What it caps out from all the money that you donate. What does it cap out for matching?
Oh, okay, capping out 12.
16,000.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So, are you ready?
Oh.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Employee down.
I think that was a ball. Not a strike.
My
Not a
favorite
strike.
new swag from the Give campaign this year is amazing lip balm. I've got more up here, so please see me afterwards and take some. I've got some kind bars, some extra stickers and stuff. So. We've got 40 minutes left in this. I'm going to initiate, for those online, I'm going to initiate the live question tag. So if you've got a question in the streaming, please type it in and we'll get your answer. We'll get your answer for any questions that you have. So we'll start with Shannon, Senior Administrative and Outreach Coordinator, and then we'll follow up with Paul, the Regional Development Director.
We're going to do
You're going to
opposite.
swap. Actually, we're going to
Yeah.
start with Paul.
We do this right on you. Right,
He's
right
hungry.
now.
He wants to
Yeah.
get back to his pizza. So, Paul, thanks for being here today. Come on up and give us a chat.
Thank you, Patricia, and we really appreciate you standing in for Monica. We miss you, Monica, but this is being recorded, so everyone will have a chance to view this again. Yeah, so I've been with NPCA for about a year now, just shy right now, and it's a great organization. We do some really cool things, and hopefully we can tell you a little bit about that today. So, this slide actually was created by our regional director, Rob Smith, and I kind of chuckled when I first saw it, but then I thought, it's really true. We kind of live in ecotopia right here. We've got hundreds of miles of premier hiking trails, within an hour of our doorstep, perhaps even less than that. We have, biking opportunities, we have fishing and boating, and we have pods of orcas that sometimes can be seen from Seattle. The closest wolf pack is about an hour and a half from here, hour and 15 minutes from here. So this is a pretty amazing place to be living here in Washington State. And on top of that, we have some of our premier national parks here as well. So we have Mount Rainier National Park, we've got Olympic National Park, North Cascades, some really amazing places that have been protected. But our mission here at National Parks Conservation Association is that we're all about protecting our parks. In fact, our mission specifically is to protect and enhance America's national parks for this and future generations. So we're not only concerned about protecting it for us, we're also concerned about leaving a legacy for future generations as well. Stephen Mather was one of our primary founders of NPCA back in 1919. And in fact, Stephen was the first director of the National Park Service back in 1916 when that organization was formed in the government. And Stephen realized that the parks really needed kind of an outside advocacy organization that was going to be interested in protecting them for their best interests and for our best interests. And so he and the gentleman to his left there, Robert Sterling Yard, Robert was his publicity chief there at the National Park Service, they got together with a couple other folks and they created what was then the National Parks Association back in 1919. But I think he really had a lot of vision, because even today, there are many threats to our national parks. And you kind of think about it and go, well, they're national parks, right? They're protected. They are, but there are many threats to them, including, for instance, underfunding. There's about an $11 billion backlog of maintenance projects that have not been funded for our national parks across the country. And Congress is doing a very good job of continuing to ignore that. There are threats from air pollution, climate change, and there are threats of development as well. Here's another case where you go, well, they're national parks, right? They're protected, but there is oil and gas drilling and mining going on sometimes right up to the borders of some of our national parks in the West. And there have actually been bills that have been proposed on some sides of the House where it's being proposed, hey, why don't we start drilling and mining within our national parks? So there are a lot of threats. And Stephen, I think, was really a visionary in trying to make sure that we do the right thing and we protect these places. So here in the Northwest, in fact, I was going to briefly tell you a little bit more about who we are. I told you about our mission, but we are about a 140-person organization, roughly, about 24 different regional offices around the country. We have a DC headquarters, and we are a nonprofit. We're not part of the government, so we are definitely a 501c3. I'm thinking about my 401k there for a second. How did that happen? But anyway, here in the Northwest, we have an office here in Seattle. There's 4 staff, including myself and Shannon, Rob Smith, who's our regional director, and Graham Taylor, who's our program manager. And we are specifically focused on Washington and Oregon. And as you can see, there are 14 different park units in Washington, including some of the places that we know and love: Rainier, Mount Rainier National Park, Olympic National Park, North Cascades. Also some places that we don't know as much about, or you may not be as much aware of, that are part of the park system, the national park system, and that includes the Bainbridge Island Exclusion Memorial, which really recognizes and pays tribute to the Japanese Americans who were actually put in internment camps during World War II. The Manhattan Project, which is a new national park, which was just announced last December, and that's going to be set up in the Hanford area there to educate people about, the whole nuclear age and our entering into the nuclear age, and talking about the development of those weapons back at that time, kind of taking kind of a nonpartisan approach to it and kind of educating people about what happened there. And then in Oregon, we focus on 6 different park units, including Crater Lake National Park and a few others. Now today what we want to do is I'm going to focus particularly on one national park, and then Shannon's going to talk about a couple of others. And specifically, I want to talk about North Cascades National Park. North Cascades, as you'll find out in a few minutes, is one of the least visited parks in the state, if not in the country, and is one of the most beautiful and rugged places as well. And the Park Service has proposed that this might be a prime habitat, prime ecosystem to bring back the grizzly bear. And we'll talk more about that and our involvement in that particular project. So first off, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview here of the North Cascades ecosystem. So if you look at it, around in this huge, red dotted line is the North Cascades ecosystem. It includes North Cascades National Park. It includes Lake Chelan National Rec Area. It includes a number of wildernesses, Glacier Peak and Pasayten, for instance. Comprises about 6 million acres. And this is a very rugged, mountainous, beautiful place. And it's the area that the Park Service thinks would make the most sense to try to restore the grizzly bear population. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about that and why we think that makes sense. So first off, North Cascades National Park, which is part of that North Cascades ecosystem, is a place that is becoming more and more referred to as the wild nearby. It's one of those beautiful, rugged places that in an hour and a half you could be out on an amazing trail. And what's interesting too is that the visitorship is actually pretty low for such a beautiful, gorgeous place. Only in 2014 there were only 24,000 visitors to the park, and we're talking about 24,000 recreational visitors. So people go there to hike or camp and enjoy the park. Now compare that, for instance, to Ross Lake National Rec Area, which is right next door, 725,000 recreational visitors every year. And that was actually a 2013 number, but you can see the dichotomy between the amount of visitorship that you see between those two areas is really vast. North Cascades National Park has the most glaciers in the lower 48. A lot of people don't know that. Roughly 300 glaciers. And of course, some of them are melting more rapidly because of climate change these days. And it has some of the most rugged mountains in the lower 48 as well. So let's kind of take a look at this as grizzly bear habitat. Let's talk about that a little bit. First, I should start off by saying that the grizzly bear does exist in the North Cascades, but their numbers are incredibly diminished. They have gone from a population of, say, 1,000 bears maybe 100 years ago in Washington State, and there may be 20 in the North Cascades if we're lucky. There's another 30 or so bears located in the Selkirk Mountains in the northeast of Washington. But we're talking specifically about the North Cascades here. So the 20 roughly bears, probably less. And the Park Service really wants to see that population, brought back. But this is actually a picture of one of our bears in neighboring British Columbia. And this guy was captured on film back in 2010 and on a remote camera at Manning Provincial Park. So we know they're there. It would be an easy, 10, 15-mile walk for a grizzly bear to walk into the North Cascades. We have just had a very difficult time trying to detect how many there really are. So we know that the numbers are pretty darn small.
Makes me wonder if they tripped the invisible wire system.
The invisible wire system, yeah. Well, the good thing, of course, is grizzly bears don't need passports to go back and forth across that international line. But yeah, there's a few bears that are making their way back and forth across the international border. So in 2010, there have been a number of studies done trying to locate bears, trying to get a better sense of how many bears there really are in the North Cascades, and we just don't really know, and that's why we say 20 or less. But in 2010, a hiker up at Cascades Pass in North Cascades took these pictures of a bear, and if you looked at these pictures, what would you think? It looks like a grizzly bear, doesn't it? Look at the big hump, the very distinctive hump that you usually see on a grizzly bear, and it's a big bear. It's a big animal. So, 12 of 13 experts agreed, you know what? I think this is, at least the first photographic evidence in years that we may actually, have some grizzly bears out there. And then if you look a few weeks later, another hiker was up there in Cascades Pass and, in fact, took this picture of this black bear. Very big black bear. Obviously, he's been working out. He's got a big hump on his back. So the question is, was this bear on the top a grizzly bear or not? We don't know. We don't know for sure. But it kind of harkens back to the fact, there are so few grizzly bears that, we get very excited when we think we may have seen one. Question?
Okay. And you'll have to repeat it so they hear it online.
Okay.
But is it a part of the conservation or a different organization when they know of bears to potentially trap and tag them and put any radio frequent transmitters on them so we can better track and understand the population growth or diminishing?
Yeah, we're not doing that so much with grizzly bears. They're doing that a lot with black bears, kind of tagging, collaring, etc. If we could find a grizzly bear to the point where we could, trap it and tag it and collar it, we would. But, it's been so difficult to try to find them. So, yeah, that's done with black bears quite a bit. In fact, that kind of leads up to the next slide here. So some of you may be asking, okay, so grizzly bears come back to the North Cascades. What's my risk of being, attacked or killed by a grizzly bear? Well, I'm here to kind of help set the record straight a little bit. First of all, in North America, there are about 600,000 black bears all across North America. We have about 25,000 to 30,000 black bears that are actually here in Washington State. Grizzly bears in all of North America, not that many, about 60,000. As I just talked about, we may have 20 or less in the North Cascades. We may have about 30 in the Selkirks. So looking at numbers here, in the 1990s, 29 people were killed by bears. And it's kind of interesting when you see how it kind of breaks out. 18 people were killed by grizzly bears, 11 by black bears. If you go out another decade, the numbers dropped even, they actually dropped. And there were 9 people killed by grizzly bears, and the number of black bears that killed people actually went up. So what this says in general is, whether it's a grizzly bear or a black bear, there's a risk. But if you look at the kind of putting in perspective here in this 22-year period down below, the risk is very low. 250 people were killed by dogs in this 22-year period. 35,000 people a year are killed in auto accidents. So the risk of you actually running into a grizzly bear and having a fatal altercation is pretty slim, even if the population does rebound in the North Cascades. So just kind of an interesting food for thought. NPCA, as an organization, we're involved in trying to educate people about grizzly bears and why it's important to bring them back. And so I haven't really talked about that, so I wanted to take a second and talk about that now. So first off, grizzly bears are kind of like an umbrella species. If you have a healthy, if grizzly bears can survive and thrive in an ecosystem, you have a healthy ecosystem. So first and foremost, that is they're kind of an indicator species in that way. But they also do a number of things in the ecosystem that actually provide benefits. First off, they do end up distributing seeds and nutrients around, and primarily through their poop is how they do it. Coastal bears that eat salmon will actually spread nutrients around through the forest. And bears in the interior, which are more referred to as grizzly bears, will actually eat berries and other fruits that produce a lot of seeds. And so when they poop, they're going to be pooping seeds and kind of doing their own Johnny Appleseed thing around in the ecosystem, which is actually helpful. They're also nature's rototiller. They're out there trying to dig up roots and grubs, and also to occasionally get at a ground squirrel in a hole, and they help kind of till the soil. So that's another benefit that they provide to the ecosystem. And then on top of that, they also will occasionally eat carrion. They'll come upon a carcass maybe that was killed by a wolf or wolves, maybe a cougar, and they'll actually take that carcass and take it apart and eat it. So they perform a number of benefits for an ecosystem. And this also brings me to a point which is useful in mentioning. Grizzly bears primarily are herbivores. I mean, technically they're omnivores, but 80 to 90% of their diet comes from sedges, grasses, roots, berries, those kinds of things. So they don't eat that much meat. They actually, it's only about 10% of their diet or so. So just an interesting point to make. So that's part of what we've been doing, is going around the state and educating people about grizzly bears, why they're important to the environment, as well as hopefully imparting some knowledge about how to coexist with grizzly bears out there as well. And I'll just throw out a couple of pointers right off the bat. I think we've got some hikers in the room, and that if you're in grizzly bear country, the last thing you want to do is hike by yourself. That is like one of the worst ways of potentially making yourself vulnerable to an attack. Bears are known to, as the number in a hiking party goes up, the risk of an attack actually diminishes. So, for instance, the guy that you heard about in Yellowstone a couple months ago was traveling alone. And that is one of the primary things you don't want to do in grizzly bear country. Always travel in groups. Always make noise. Make sure you carry bear spray. Those are some of and know how to use it too. So if it's clipped to your belt, you don't know how to use the bear spray, and you end up squirting yourself, not a good thing. So we definitely are trying to get around, particularly around the North Cascades communities, and tell people about why bears are important and how to coexist with them. We also had a series of presentations around in the North Cascades communities called Ghost Bears that was put on by Dr. Bill Gaines, and he was actually the one that produced those statistics that I just showed you a minute ago. And he talked about the study that they did for a number of years trying to document the existence of grizzly bears in the North Cascades, and they came up with very little, if anything. No hair samples at all, no pictures of grizzly bears from all the remote cameras that they set up. So, that just tells you how scarce they really are out there. So what's next? So, we're going to continue to talk around the community, go to various events, talk about why grizzly bears are important to the North Cascades. But in terms of the schedule, the environmental impact statement, which is kind of the standard procedure process that you have to go through, that was decreed at the federal government level. The environmental impact statement or study was initially announced back in 2014. So back earlier this year, there were some initial public meetings to get comments from people and kind of understand how they felt about grizzly bears, and try to take some public record to get a sense of where people were at. So that happened earlier this year. Next year, we expect that the National Park Service will actually issue a draft environmental impact statement. And there, the proposal that they make could range from don't do a thing, leave the bears where they are, and see if they, if their numbers do increase, which is what we've been doing for the past 20, 25 years, and nothing has happened. In fact, the population is diminishing as far as we know. Could always range all the way up to the possibility of restoring the population, which might require some augmentation, maybe introducing some bears into the system. So we're expecting, whatever their decision is, we're expecting to come out mid next year. And at that time, the public will be able to comment on it, and then a final environmental impact statement will come out in 2017. So that tells you a little bit about one of our priority areas in the North Cascades. What I want to do is bring up Shannon, and she's going to talk about some of our other priority areas that we're working on in Washington State. Shannon? And we got a little clicker here. Just hit that to advance.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and thanks to all the online people. So, Olympic National Park, one of our jewels in the Northwest here. How many of you have been to Olympic? Cool. So you all know what a special place this is. Olympic is one of the most diverse parks in the entire system. It has coastal areas, it has inland, it has mountains, it has the rainforest, and so it's in Washington. It's our largest and most visited park, and it was created through a tool that the president has, the Antiquities Act. It's a way that allows the president to elevate public lands into monument status. So that's how we have the Olympic Park. And the Olympic Park, when you look at satellite images of it, you can see that there's so much pressure on the peninsula for logging that the only reason there are any trees out there is because they are in the park, essentially. Like you can, when you are out there, the border of the park it's cut pretty much right up to the park. So that just shows and tells like how important it is to have these places protected. The Elwha River Dam removal, this is something that we worked on for a very long time. We were involved in this process for over 20 years. And we did all kinds of things in our involvement. We worked with the rep at that time was Norm Dix, and we did a lot of lobbying with Norm Dix. We did a lot of presentations at the Elwha. We would bring people out, over 30 tours, and show them the biodiversity out there, and we would work with the scientists. And the Elwha itself has 5 of the native salmon species in it, and since the dam has been removed, those 5 species have been returning to the upper areas, and so that was something that we focused on with partnerships with a lot of conservation groups. And we continue to work out there. The dam has been removed. The project was complete, but then they realized that there was a little bit of dam that was remaining in Glines Canyon, the upper dam site, and it was actually a barrier to the fish migration. So they didn't think there was going to be an issue, but this last year, the water levels were at record low. They were so incredibly low that it was a barrier. So they're in there now. The road was closed last week. I don't know if it's still closed this week, but taking out that last little bit of dam to remove the last little bit of barrier there, and a couple of boulders fell down on top of it too. So they're clearing that out. And what we're doing at this time is, and we have been doing this for years, but we take volunteers out to the Elwha, and the Olympic National Park, the Park Service, as they were going into the project, built these amazing greenhouses out there, and they started collecting seed, native seed from all over the park, because they knew that once the reservoir was empty, that non-native plants were going to spring up like that, and they wanted this area to come back and to be how it was before, to maintain the integrity of the biological integrity of the area. So they started planting thousands of seeds. They have huge greenhouses, and every year they plant and then they bring them out in November. So we go, and with our volunteers, we work at the greenhouses, replanting the plants, and then we will go out to the Elwha in November, which is coming up. So if you want to join us on that trip, it's really fun. We wear packs, take the plants out to the river, plant them, and it's a great way to see what is going on out there and the astounding efforts that the Park Service, in collaboration with the lower Elwha Klamath Klallam tribe, what they're doing to get this river restored to its historical level. And this is a shot of the greenhouse, and their scientists are incredible. They've done a great job with this project. It's kind of running to the end of its course now. So we'll see what happens in the next couple years if the funding continues or whatnot. And this is our group when we were out there last year. So it's right in that is what the riverbed looks like, the new exposed area, a lot of rocks. It's pretty harsh growing conditions, really. So. And then at Mount Rainier, we do every year we're up there for National Public Lands Day. This is a picture from this year. We did a revegetation project in an old drive-in campsite there. And the reason we do these projects is because we work on conservation, we work on park protection, but we also work on connectivity. So it's really important to get people into the park, doing service projects, and feeling that level of connectivity where, oh, this is my park. I belong here. My work is helping to make this a better place. And then this is in the North Cascades. We go up there every June, which is early for the park, as you know, probably. You can't access a lot of it until a little bit later. But we go the first week of June and work on one of the front country trails. So that's always a good time. And it's a good time for volunteers to come out and work directly with the Park Service and hear from them about what the issues in the parks are and what the challenges are and what the successes are. And the Park Service, we have a great working relationship with the Park Service as well. And then we go out to the Olympic Coast. It's very near Claylock. It's at South Beach. And we do a coastal cleanup out there, and we partner with other conservation organizations. The coastal cleanup is put on by an organization called Coast Savers. And they're made up of a lot of marine scientists and the Park Service and a couple of other organizations out there. But it's the largest coastal cleanup in the state. So last year, I think we removed 1,500 tons of debris off the coast. So it's really significant. And it's not just on the park beaches, but there are people all the way around the entire peninsula down to Long Beach out on that day. So it's a lot of fun, and that's my main work with the organization. So that's all I have, I think.
Come up and wrap it up.
Yeah, please.
Where's that picture?
Crater Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to remind people online to submit questions?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
That was great. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to participate in one of those
You're
volunteer
going out
projects, but I'm
next
going.
month.
I'm going next month, so I'm going to get out there. I was also told to remind the folks who are online, if you would like to submit a question, feel free. Patricia's monitoring that, so we can certainly answer your questions if you have them. So hopefully we gave you a little bit of better understanding of what National Parks Conservation Association is all about. We're not part of the government. We're a 501c3, and we do a lot of great work advocating for our national parks. And really we just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg of what we do here. We also do a lot of lobbying. We talk to a lot of our government officials here in Washington State, and we also talk to our senators and representatives at the federal level as well. So there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes to make sure that our electeds are paying attention to our national parks, they understand the issues, and making sure that they vote the right way to help the funding for our parks. So speaking of funding, I did also want to make just a quick pitch. Of course, it's the giving campaign time of year, and we are in the Give tool. So if you're inclined and maybe you want to take advantage of that $50 that Microsoft has given you, and you want to make a donation to NPCA, or maybe you want to increase that, or however you want to do it, we would welcome your support, and we'd be grateful for your support. So I just wanted to put in the 2 cents there. What kind of questions do you have?
New employees to Microsoft.
Oh, new employees.
It's the new employee, yeah.
Forgot that little detail.
Yeah, they're all
But
excited.
for new employees, you're given $50 that you can donate to whatever 501c3 you want to. Okay.
Our screening also gives $50.
And also, we
Yes.
can get
Yes.
$25 an hour for any of those projects that we went out on.
That's correct. So, Shannon talked about those volunteer projects. Microsoft will pay us, NPCA, if you come on an NPCA project, $25 an hour for the time that you put in. So that's pretty awesome stuff. So yeah.
Do you know which weekend in November they're doing that cleanup?
What weekend
Yeah.
in November are we
It's
doing
the
the cleanup?
20 and 21st.
Okay, right before Thanksgiving then.
Mm-hmm.
So November
The
20 and
planting.
21st.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
send you the flyer for that.
Why don't you do that, and then Monica and I will make sure it's dispersed out to anyone that was invited.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
definitely.
appreciate it. So-
And
Great.
additionally, Paul, the information that you shared, especially about the grizzlies, I think is really interesting for those of us who camp
Okay.
and have a somewhat abnormal fear of dying by
Sure.
bear,
Sure.
like myself. Do you have information out at your website at the organizational level that provides information about the grizzly population, kind of speaking to the slides that you were just showing us? Is there a link
We
back?
do have some information. We're in the middle of a revamp of our website altogether, so I'm not 100% certain what's up there. But I can certainly, if need be, we could even share the slides or, send some links when our website has been brought back up to
It's
speed.
supposed to be up
By
next
the-
week.
Is it next
Is that a
week
local
sometime?
Yeah.
version or the national version?
We have a link to our local page from the national. Yeah.
That would have all
So
these
it's
events on it.
npca.org.
Those events on it.
Right. So next week, hopefully the new website will be unleashed. So, but it's a good point, Patricia. I mean, it's not just about hiking too, it's about camping. And, one of the things that you should do, of course, and I think every camper knows this, is don't store food in your tent. So, a bear has a really, really sensitive nose. And if he smells something he likes, and he smells that it's coming from that little, colored fabric, house over there, he's going to go and check it out. So definitely want to make sure that you keep things either you hang your food or you put it in a bear-proof canister. And some places, some wilderness areas, they actually, and national parks, that's the way you have to camp. You have to take a bear-proof canister with you to put your food in. So, and as far as the actual grizzly population, they're predicting even if there is a restoration project that is put in place where they actually bring in some bears, it's going to be over 100 years before they have even what they consider a sustainable grizzly bear population. Grizzly bears have anywhere from 1 to 3 cubs. There's usually a 50% mortality rate. So, there aren't a lot of bears that are born that survive. And so it's going to take a long time for there to even be, a population of 100, 150 bears. It's going to take a while.
50% mortality rate?
50%.
Wow.
It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary if you're a bear cub.
Yeah, kinda.
Life is rough.
Have they mentioned any numbers that they would try to move in? If
Oh,
they're
they-
going to transplant bears.
I think
from,
they have no
Would
idea.
that be from Yellowstone or something? Yellowstone area or?
The earlier on there were introductions in certainly in Glacier, and I think they did it in Yellowstone too. Some bears, but some of those are remnant populations that were left from the grizzly bears ranged from Alaska all the way down practically into Mexico back in the day, but most of them were killed off during the westward expansion. So, yeah, I mean, there's data from reintroductions that have been done in some of the national parks, and I'm sure if that's the decision that's made, that is, they'll certainly be looking back at what was learned from some of those other augmentations that happened previously. But hopefully here we're talking about at least restoring a population that may already exist. There may only be 5 bears there, but hopefully we can add a few bears to kind of make sure that we've got a viable population. Question?
What about the wolves? Wolf population are also pretty depleted, so are there plans to introduce back wolves,
Well, wolves are actually, it's interesting, wolves were originally reintroduced in Yellowstone back in the mid-90s, and there have been some wolf reintroductions in Idaho, I believe, as well, over the years. And so what's happening here in Washington is we're seeing the descendants of those wolves actually coming into Washington. and they're also coming from the north. They're also coming from British Columbia. So we're getting kind of an expansion from the south and from the north. Right now, the last I knew, I think we have roughly 15 packs of wolves here in Washington now. And a pack could be as few as 3 individuals. So it really varies. And as I mentioned, the closest wolf pack to us here is in the Teanaway, and I think one was recently killed. One was recently shot, but there may be only 3 or so individuals in that pack right now. So the Teanaway area is right next to Cle Elum and Roslyn, right out there. So I mean, if you took 90 out to Cle Elum, and then you just had a little bit farther east, you're up in the Teanaway. Beautiful area. So it's kind of cool in a way that Washington State didn't have to do anything. Wolves just came back of their own accord. Same thing happened with wolverines. Wolverines were extirpated, as were many of those carnivores, back in the 1900s. But in the late 80s and 90s, we started seeing a few individuals actually showing up in the Cascades. And basically what they did is they're making their way back from British Columbia down into Washington State. So there may be as many as a couple dozen wolverines, in the North Cascades and in the mountains in Washington, which is kind of cool. So, I mean, that's the other thing too. I mean, North Cascades National Park has all these different critters in the park and in that ecosystem that I showed you. But the one that's really suffering the most is the grizzly bear, just because, reproduction rates are so low, and there's a lot of development, other things they have to kind of pass through from British Columbia to get down into the North Cascades of Washington. So, letting it kind of take place on its own, so far that philosophy hasn't worked. So, we're crossing fingers that the Park Service makes a different decision, but we don't know for sure. We're advocating for augmentation, for restoration, and we'll see where it goes.
To that point, Paul, wouldn't the Olympic National Forest, if that's a natural habitat for grizzly bears, would they have to supplant them there? Because they're probably not going to go on a bear walkabout.
Oh, they certainly wouldn't.
Ferry up and
And
go up.
I actually don't know a lot about the history of grizzlies down on the Olympic Peninsula. Do you know,
I do not
Shannon?
know either. No, I've only been focused on
I would
the
guess there
Cascades.
may have been some, but there may not have been a lot, because it's always been a little bit isolated up there. I mean, there were wolves there too, but
It would be focused
it's going to
on-
take a while for wolves to get back to the Olympic Peninsula. As you say, it's a pretty big walkabout to get over there. So, I don't really know about the peninsula.
You have a question?
Question.
If we are looking to volunteer, what is the best place to find events and sign up?
Shannon, what's the best place to sign up if someone's looking to volunteer? Or should they email you?
Oh,
Talk to the microphone if you can.
oh.
You have a mic. You have a mic on. So, yeah.
So you can email me at sbrundle@npca.org. And our website will be up next week, hopefully. But right now it's not. I don't have the events listed on there. So npca.org is the website. And you go to the Northwest. There's a little star for Seattle. You go in there, and then all of our events will be up, hopefully next week. But until then, email me directly, and I can get you the information that you need.
Cool. Great.
Let me have an additional question.
Sure.
Sorry?
The
The contact information.
You mentioned lobbying, like that your organization done lobbying. I'm wondering, like, in the recent events with the Land and Water Preservation Fund that
Yep.
expired,
Yes.
I wonder, like, if maybe your organization does something about it, or do you coordinate with a group of association? It seems like it's a big thing that they don't even know that a lot of things have been bought up.
Yeah.
With that money for public use, like many trails outside of Seattle, like you mentioned, there's 100 miles of trails within an hour. A lot of it was through Land and Water.
Land and Water Conservation Fund, right. Yeah, exactly. In
So-
fact, I was working for Conservation Northwest at the time of the Cascades Conservation Partnership, and we used the Land and Water Conservation Fund to buy land to add to the Forest Service areas around Snoqualmie Pass. So yeah, I mean, and Land and Water Conservation Fund money is used by other organizations like Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition and others as they advocate for, adding lands to, the public domain. And that money is used to buy those lands. So right now there is a threat to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. In fact, the spigot has essentially been turned off. The fund still exists, but where the money normally comes from is from oil and gas drilling revenues, lease revenues. And so right now Congress has basically turned off the spigot, and the funding expired. I think I was at the end of September. So we're involved, as are other organizations, in trying to make people aware of it and encouraging people to inform their, congressional folks and folks in the Senate as well. Obviously, same thing, but your House folks and your Senate folks to stand up for the Land and Water Conservation Fund and see that it gets funded again, because it does a lot of good and it has added a number of great, areas back to the public domain that were previously in private hands. So it's absolutely true, and we're working on that. It's a difficult issue. Unfortunately, there's a big contingent. We are nonpartisan, but there is a contingent in the government right now that is, working towards making sure that those monies go towards other things. For instance, funding the training of energy workers. Which, let's see, should we buy, lands and add them to our public land domain, or should we train energy workers? I mean, that's just one example, but there are a number of things that Bishop is looking to, funnel that money towards instead of what it's, primarily been used for in the past. So, yeah, so we encourage you, contact your representative, contact your senator, and let them know that you think Land and Water Conservation Fund is important. So,
I think that was just recently out I'm on the mailing list for
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Thing, so we got
Yep.
just recently. So.
Yep. Yeah, we are trying to make people aware of it. Any other questions? Anyone online have any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate you being here. We appreciate your interest. And Patricia, thank you so much for standing in and being our host today. As I said before, Monica, we miss you. And come back soon. And thank you, Patricia, in the interim. We really appreciate you being here to help kick things off. Okay, thank you very much.